Thank you everyone for being here today, for making time for social self-care. Before I start, I want to quickly do a mood check and also invite all of you to please, because this is a social self-care session, please try and turn your cameras on. It would be lovely to see some faces. So let's do a quick check. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Oh, lovely. What a lovely people. What lovely faces I see. Nice. Thank you so much. So let's do a quick check. On a scale of 1 to 10, how are you feeling right now? 1 being, oh, I'm just so tired, it's Wednesday, and 10 being, yeah, excited, pumped up, rest of the week to go. Wow, feels like Monday. All right, let's have those numbers on the chat box. Oh, someone's feeling 4. 100, wow, thank you so much. All right, 501. People are trying to compete with each other now. 10. Oh, Bhagyashree, you're at 1. I feel for you. Infinity. Okay, you're trying to beat your previous score. That's not fair. Great. Thank you all for responding. Keep those numbers coming up. And again, thank you for being here today. So as Aisha mentioned, we're talking about social connections today. We're going to be, sorry, I think someone, okay. All right. And throughout the session, please feel free to pop in any questions or thoughts or comments that you want to share on the chat. I will definitely address them as much as possible as we go on throughout the session. Okay. And please be a quick heads up. There will be certain activities that I will want you to do, maybe some reflective activities, or maybe an activity that you want to take home and do it later. But it is just make sure that you understand that's about your, it's for your social self-care and it's for your own good. So whether you want to do it right now or take it home for later, it's completely up to you. But I would love to hear thoughts on the activity as well. All right, now that we're all tuned in, I'm going to share my screen. Yes, all right. So let me know if you can see my screen. Yeah. I can't see all of your faces.
Visible. Yeah, it's visible, Shivani.
Great, thank you. All right, awesome. So we're here today to talk about social connectedness. And I want to bring to you all a structure for social connectedness, right? And that structure today is called build, preserve, and maintain. How do we build relationships to start with? How do we preserve our energy throughout these relationships so we can maintain these relationships? That's the structure I'm bringing to you. A lot of the times people are like, hey, let's just make some friends and let's just, build some relationships. Let's just go with the flow. But I want to introduce a structure to you because many of the times we have barriers that come into play. Emotional barriers, right? Physical barriers that come into play. Of course, the past 2-3 years, it has not been easy for us to socially connect with so many people, even in the professional or personal front. Whether you've been working from home or whether you've been working at the workplace, you've still had to isolate yourself at some point or be away from your loved ones at some point. So that is why this topic is the need of the hour at the moment, right? So I'm bringing to you all a structure for social connectedness. To start with, social connectedness is definitely beneficial in an organization, right? Why? Because it motivates employees and people in general, individuals in general, to come in and actually be motivated to work. Like, think about the last time, let's say you did not want to do anything at all. You did not feel like working on a project at all or doing any task at all, but your colleague or someone said, hey, I'm there. Let's just see, let's just work together. Let's just go with it. And that kind of got you to thinking, okay, you know what, maybe if I just stick around for 1 more hour or 2 more hours, I can pull through it, right? It was that connection you had with your colleague that could have motivated you, that may have got you out of bed and said, hey, I can stick around for 1-2 hours today. Let me just try it, right? Definitely, we know about all the benefits of social connectedness, but I want to talk about what are the barriers that come to us feeling socially connected with each other. And so I'm going to ask Aisha to release a poll here just to understand and gauge what resonates with all of you here today. So please select an option out of all the 7 statements that resonate with you the most. These statements are: I get nervous every time I approach a colleague with a question. Oh, please elongate the window so that you can see the entire statement, because some statements are long. I've been at this company for 3 months and I still don't know anyone very well. There aren't many opportunities for me to practice negotiation persuasion in my current workplace. I have no idea how I'm doing at work. I can recognize the emotion under my colleagues' words. I try to form my next response while the person is talking. I can easily paraphrase what the other person has said to me. Going to give you all a minute to respond to this. I can see that we have 54 responses. We can do better. Please vote. Come on. Okay. Still waiting for a few more votes. Okay. 82, 82. Maybe we can get to 90 and then we can close it. I can see that there are majority of votes for I try to form my next response while the person is talking. And I'll get to why I've asked these statements. But there are also votes for I can recognize the emotion under my colleagues' words, which is also an important aspect of this conversation we're having. Right. All right, we've had 87 votes. Great. Okay. Thank you all for responding. And of course, if none of these statements resonate with you, feel free to write NA on the chat box as well, because there could be other barriers. These are the most common ones, but there could definitely be other barriers that have not been mentioned right here, right? So I'm going to tell you all the results. We have the highest vote for, like I said, I try to form my next response while the person is talking. We have the lowest votes for there aren't many opportunities for me to practice negotiation persuasion in my current workplace. I'm glad most of you have opportunities for that. And the second highest vote is I can recognize the emotion under my colleagues' words. Now, these two statements are very important, and also they're opposites, right? So the reason why I asked these statements, specifically going through them, just give me a minute, yeah, is me getting nervous when I approach a colleague in person is about me getting anxious in a social setting, right? Or me feeling a little bit, that's my barrier. That's my emotional barrier. Many of the times we may not feel nervous while approaching a colleague with a question, but maybe with a critical feedback, right? Or maybe just reaching out for help or support, right? Little bit hesitancy. That's majority of people, what they face, right? But if you think about it, critical feedback and reaching out for help and support is one of the main things that actually help us build social connections. That's how the person in front of you knows that they're looking out for you when they're giving you critical feedback. And also the fact that, hey, I'm looking out for you if you're asking them for help, right? The statement that I wanted to actually highlight was I try to form my next response while the person is talking, right? This is so common. So many of us do it. Like if I were to sit in a conversation with, Ria, for example, sorry, Ria, to put you in the spotlight. But while I'm saying something to Ria might be thinking, hey, what am I going to say next after Shivani is done talking, right? Or when, we're sitting all in a circle and I've asked people to introduce themselves, you're already thinking about your introduction so much that you've forgotten the other people's names or what they said or where they were even from. even though that is the crucial bit to building social connections, right? So I'm going to bring out these statements as highlights, and thank you so much again for voting. But yeah, these are certain barriers we do have, and they're important to talk about and be aware of more than anything, to realize that, hey, what am I doing wrong when it comes to building my relationships, right? And now I want to bring to you all a very harsh truth here, right? Lack of social connection, so loneliness and isolation, is worse for us than what we think is worse for us, right? Like smoking, obesity, diabetes, even blood pressure, high blood pressure, right? It's worse for us. Human beings are incapable of functioning without social connections. And that is why it has to be at the top priority level for all of us. We must always figure out a way to make time to build relationships and maintain relationships in order for us to be okay, be emotionally okay and physically okay, right? Now, how do we build relationships? That's my first segment. I already told you all that I'm going to bring to you all a structure today. So I'm bringing to you a structure by starting the segment of building. How do we start by building social connectedness? How do we build social connections? I want you all to carefully look at the next slide and tell me on the chat box the first thought that comes to your mind, your first reaction to this image. Okay, ready? I hope you're all ready, because I can't see your faces. All right, okay. Shocked, horrified. Yes, shocked. All right. Unpleasantly shocked. Right? Most of you are saying shocked, horrified, or unpleasantly shocked. Right? All right. Now I want you to also think about, what did it do to your face while you were looking at, the first second you saw this image? What did it do to your face? Did your face expression twitch a little bit, or did you immediately go towards gauging this emotion? Excited, surprised, anxious. Okay, you guys are still typing. Right. But also think about what it did to your face when you first came across this image, right? And keep that kind of, that reflection with you. I'll just get to it in a moment, why I'm asking that. Now, this is another image that I'm going to show to all of you. Right? Look at each of these images, and the longer you look at them, think about what it also does to your face. Right? Right. Thank you for identifying these emotions. Also very important part, right? So the reason why I brought these images to all of you for social connectedness is because I want to bring to you all the biological context of social connectedness. Why do people have to connect? And how does our body actually make it biologically possible for us to connect? It's through a very, very famous research called mirror neurons. How many of you have heard of mirror neurons? What they are? No. We try to feel the situations. Yes. I'm glad you're giving me these inputs. Yes, thank you so much, Rajneesh. Okay, great. So some of you have heard about this term and some of you have not, right? Mirror neurons are actual neurons that are part of our brain that can mirror the expression or the emotion that the person in front of you is feeling, is showing, like visibly showing. Okay. So if I'm doing this with my hands, right, you may not be doing it, but your mirror neurons are already doing this. It's already registering my movement, right? If I'm like shocked, right? The reason that your mirror neuron is already, maybe somewhere it'll come to your facial structure also, but your mirror neurons are already mirroring my expression. And that is how human beings connect. How do you know when your colleague is sad, or when your your sister, your mother, anybody is sad or they're happy? They've got expressions on their face and you connect with them, the vibe, right, that they give out. That is where your biological context comes in when you're talking about social connection, right? Now, I want to link mirror neurons, the biological, like, remember, your body has prepped you to be socially connected. It's time to get socially connected. It's time to put it on your priority list, right? Now, I want you to look at this image, right? I want you to point out, the reason why I brought this image is because, I mean, most of us here, I hope we like dogs, but also because mirror neurons and also expressions from our faces, right? They are not just limited to human beings. It goes further than that. Animals use eye contact to connect with us as well. Like, dogs are not able to listen to instructions if you're, looking away from them. They find it very difficult to register. But the moment you have eye contact with them and the moment you have expression with them, that's when they register, right? So evolutionarily, we're wired to be socially connected. Now, in order to apply the same theory of mirror neurons, I want to bring to you all a few ways to socially build relations. We're still on build, right? One way is, of course, the expressions that I was talking about, right? So if I'm talking like this, and I'm just saying a bunch of things, you're not going to register it. You're going to be like, hey, why is she so bored? She's doing a webinar. You're not going to connect with me, right? But if I have the right expressions appropriate to context, I'm more likely to build a rapport with you. I'm more likely to build a relationship with you, right? So therefore, my paralinguistics also count. When it comes to nonverbal communication, our paralinguistics are slightly different. Things are doing, yeah, nodding while the person is talking to you, right? These are things that we need to be mindful about. These are things that we already know, but so many of us do not actually apply it. Eye gaze, right? Where am I looking? Left, right? Am I looking at the person or not? Many of the times, just to give you a quick fact, many of the times we realize when a person is in distress, they're less likely to have eye contact. So also keep that in mind, just as a quick fact, right? The last but not the least, non-verbal communication, non-verbal way of building relationship is body language, right? How close am I to this person? How further back am I? And this also counts in a virtual setting. It definitely does. How much of my face is on the screen? How much of, how much am I laid back, right? It tells people how you're feeling and how interested you are in this actual relationship that you're trying to build, whether it's an interview you're going for, whether it's just a colleague that you're trying to talk to, or whether it's with your family members. It tells them how invested you are in this relationship. And that is the key towards building it. Now, verbally, again, most of us know these factors, right? We have to be clear, we have to be concise, we have to be honest, we have to listen to the person, right? But one thing we all miss in building social connections is that genuine concern and curiosity. So I want you all to ask yourself, the last time you were maybe trying to build a connection with somebody, or you were having a conversation with somebody close to you, or maybe somebody new that you were trying to build a connection with, were you genuinely curious and interested in what they were saying? If you weren't, then human beings are capable, we're all capable here to identify that this person is not interested or genuine about what they're saying. So building a connection is not just about these four things that you have to follow. It's also about building that genuine concern for this person. Hey, how are you doing today? Is everything okay? Having that tiny small talk instead of going straight up to, okay, we were supposed to talk about this. Let's get straight to the point, right? Genuine concern and curiosity. That is how we build relationships. Now, you don't have to answer this question right now. This is a question to hold and take away and reflect upon, okay? I want you all to think about what has made it easy for you to connect with people in the past 1 month, and what has made it difficult. Has it just been the physical setting? Has it been an emotional barrier? Has it been just the lack of motivation, right, towards building a relationship? What has made it easy? and what has made it difficult. So think about one good, meaningful relationship that you have or conversation that you've had where you actually connected with a person. What made that so easy? People say click, right? It's not always just a click. There are factors involved in that. I want you to go back and think about and identify those factors. And what has made it difficult, right? What has caused that resistance? I'm now reading all your chat box comments from time to time. Reciprocation of effort from the other person. That's very interesting. Also goes back, Rose, to think about your expectation from the other person, right? Could be a barrier. So instead of thinking about reciprocation from the other person, it's also about our expectation of reciprocation from the other person, right? Can be a barrier. Same nature is easy to connect with, opposite nature may be difficult. So for you, Apurva, it seems to be more like has to do with relevant, common ground, common interest, relevant, right? Ignorance of the other person. Again, Shiv, go back and think about what we just talked about, right? What made you think that this person was being ignorant? Maybe it was the way they were talking, they were feeling, right? Here, remember that we're trying to build ourselves to be more socially connected to others, right? Let's not do those things that we don't like, right? But go back and think about, what has made it easy for you and what has made it difficult for you internally. Not what the other person did per se, but what was the resistance within you, okay? Now we've talked a little bit about build, right? Now I want to go into something really interesting, which is preserve. How do we preserve our energy and ourselves in a relationship? And wait for some funky titles also from my side. How many of you have heard of the term energy vampires? Anybody? Yes, I like yes with an exclamation mark. Okay, it's really, someone's been bothering you a little bit, Neha. Great. All right. Yes, no. Okay, so we have some of you who have heard about it, some of you who have not heard about it, right? Energy vampires. Okay, so I'll tell you what energy vampires are. Just give you a little bit of a story, right? Again, go back and think about a time in your life when, you've literally sat with an individual and this individual has spoken to you and you've just felt your energy drain and drain and drain and drain. That conversation has left you feeling exhausted more than feeling energized or, hey, motivated, right? It has left you feeling exhausted. That person is not the one to blame. Let's be very clear here. That person is not the one to blame, right? It's the vibe. It's the mismatch of the vibe in layman's terms. But what energy vampires actually are doing are certain qualities that are unhealthy, right? It's an unhealthy element. So if in case somebody is constantly criticizing you in that conversation, you don't want to be a part of that conversation. If somebody is constantly, let's say, trying to up you by one, if you say, hey, I had a fever yesterday, and they go like, my mom's in the hospital, right? You understand that the mom being in the hospital is definitely something that's really important to this person, but there was no acknowledgement or validation for the fact that you just recovered from a fever, right? So somebody who's always trying to up you, or even trying to get you to up you, saying, oh, last week you were able to do that. How come you're not able to do this week, right? These are statements and tiny, unhealthy elements that make a person energy vampires. And more than thinking about who that was, think about if you've ever been one for another person, right? Think about if you've upped somebody for no reason or criticized somebody constantly in a conversation for no reason, right? Or just been somebody very unhealthy or negative to be around, right? Think about that, because we don't want to be that, because we hate that, right? So we don't want to be that for people. So identify your energy vampires right? And try and if you feel like they're draining your energy, try and get them support, or try and walk away from that situation, because it's doing you no good. It's doing you no good. Okay. It's going to get to a level where it's going to really show on your physical health overall. If any of you have experiences, would love to hear some experiences on the chat box, definitely, but feel free to be as it's okay if you don't want to share it also, it's fine. Kavita, how to handle a negative person 24/7? Thank you so much for asking that question. How to handle it really depends on the relationship you have with that person, Kavita. But also understand that some relationships do not have a match, and there has to be a line that you have to draw and put yourself ahead, right? It's called social self-care for a reason. It's not just called social care, right? Social self-care. So you care for yourself, try to flourish, thrive through your social life. That's what it means, right? You do not have to burn. Oh, if it's a husband, right? Okay, we can talk about this, Kavita. If it's a personal relationship like a husband, a sister, or a friend or something, it can get really difficult. But we will definitely, if you want, you can reach out to me, and I will definitely answer this question as we also go on, because I have a lot to cover. But thank you so much for sharing. It's not easy, right? Energy vampires, look out for them, identify those unhealthy elements, and try not to be one. Right? Figure out red flags in conversations, and red flags come a lot in organizations when we feel lack of validation again, and it comes from lack of acknowledgement. Again, comes back to feeling constantly criticized by either your colleague or somebody who's in an authoritative figure, right? Your boss or somebody you're reporting to. One of the unhealthy elements, and this is something that most people ignore, that is dependency, right? You can have a relationship where the individual is, let's say, reaching out to you for help and support, and you're reaching out to this individual for help and support, right? But to what extent are you going to continuously rescue this individual from the challenges that they are going through? Maybe you can't be there for them all the time. And if you're that person, then that person can't be there for you all the time. Dependency is a huge factor when it comes to preserving your energy. It takes so much out of you to rescue another person constantly, or feel like the person who always has to be there, right? That guilt of walking away from somebody who needs you in that moment, that's another one that you have to deal with, right? So how do you deal with dependency? There have to be expectations set right from the beginning, whether it's a romantic relationship, whether it's a mother-child like relationship, right? Or your colleagues. Dependency is something that can get really unhealthy, and over time it can rupture that beautiful relationship that you did have, because there's expectations are just so high, right? And you're not able to meet them at that point. Unhealthy element, control and disrespect. Identify people who are trying to control you, or if you're trying to control somebody, identify disrespect. It does not always have to be an extreme situation. It can also be something that people think is very common, but it's also disrespect, right? Identify that, because over time, building up of that is going to lower your self-confidence in a social setting. And this can also lead to maybe sometimes avoiding people and relationships and connections overall. So try and identify these unhealthy elements in your current relationships, or if you've been experiencing or been a part of that, right? How do we resolve this? By building boundaries, right? Everything circles down to boundaries, right? It all circles down to where do we draw the line, right? It circles down to what you think and what your expectations of a social connection is, and that's where you draw the line, right? Of course, there's 10%, 20% here and there where you'll have to cross the line a little bit here and there, but boundaries are very important, right? Now, Again, think about a situation. Go back and think about a situation where you had to say no to somebody. Okay. Maybe recently, or maybe 2 months ago or 3 months ago. You had to say no to an individual. Could be close to you, right? How did that no feel when you couldn't do it? Right? Think about it. Think about you just saying no to this person, but you couldn't do it, and how that felt and why it felt that way. I'm going to give you guys like 20 seconds to process this. And if any responses on the chat box, it would be great. Right? Chirag, thank you. Fear of losing. Asta, can't do it. Right? Tough. It's tough. Bad and guilt stuff. Definitely tough, right? And that's because there's that guilt, like you guys are rightly saying, guilt, fear of losing. Fear of losing converts a little bit if we go further, fear of rejection, right? If I say no to somebody tomorrow, this person will not like me. This person will not come back to me for the same request. What if I will lose this person forever, right? Feel bitter while doing it, worse after, but now you're far away from the situation and that feels good. That's great, Chintan. So distancing yourself from that situation was your way of building that boundary, literally, physically. But yeah, you had that, resource to pull that off. Many of us do not, can't always walk away from that situation, right? So when it comes to boundaries, it's you. Again, social self-care. So it's you who has to be put into that spotlight. You put yourself in that spotlight and think for yourself and think, hey, where do I draw this line? These are the unhealthy elements I'm seeing, or these are the unhealthy elements I'm, noticing, or these red flags I'm noticing. Where do I draw that line? And when do I say no? And why do I say no? Most of the time, we don't understand to say no because we don't know why we're saying no. First, you gotta accept that with yourself, right? Internalize your no. Why am I saying no? Hi, I'm Shivani Chauhan. I don't like this happening. This is why I'm saying no. This is how you have to talk to yourself, right? Once you have overcome, or at least tiny bit, realize the guilt and burden has slightly reduced after you've accepted this, acknowledged this. Now it's time to communicate and express to the person in front of you, right? It's time to do this in a polite, humble way as per usual. So what will we not do? We will respond. We will not react. Okay. Reaction is like, hey, how dare you do this to me, right? Response is like, I understand this. However, I am feeling this way, right? Maybe a way to build boundaries is like Chintan also said, right? Space and time off. Sometimes you just need to take space and time off. Please, if there's a situation that is frustrating you a lot in front of the person, try and take 2-3 minutes off, let that energy out, because as we all know, we may say things that we don't mean in that situation, and that can again rupture that relationship for the future, right? Now, lastly, most important point when you're communicating this to somebody is please use emotions in your statements. There is, again, biological context behind this, right? When human beings start to use words like I'm feeling low, or I'm a little bit unhappy about this, or I'm a little worried that you were not home on time yesterday, I was a little concerned. When we start to use emotions in statements, the person in front of you, remember, is also human, right? So they also feel emotion. When you're saying an emotion, it triggers that emotion. They feel that emotion as well. So instead of me saying, or, to somebody, maybe my partner or somebody saying that, hey, where were you all night? I was up all night waiting. Instead of me saying that, if I want my partner to, for example, understand how I was really feeling, then I would say something like, I was a little worried. It was a little late. I was concerned if you would get home on time or not. Is it okay if we can talk about this, right? Bring emotions into statements. Don't show it, bring it, right? Say it, label it and say it. Bring emotions into statements always. And please refrain from using blaming statements when you're trying to build boundaries. Most of the time we are angry or frustrated when we want space from people. So we're like, hey, just leave me alone. You did this to me, you did that to me, so just leave me alone. No, let's not use you, me statements. Let's go with us, right? Build that space and try not to blame the other person. Instead, make the conversation about your feeling and soften that feeling. Right? I hope I'm making sense. Do let me know. Yeah. Question to hold for preserving your energy. When do you feel okay connecting with someone? And where do you draw the line? Each person in this very webinar is different, right? You have to draw your line. I've only come here with certain tools on how to do that. But take this question, hold it with yourself. If you really want to have a great social self-care and social connectedness, as in the long run, think about what's good when you're connecting with somebody and where do you draw the line? When do you feel, okay, I can connect with this person? And you say, no, no more from here on. Hold this question, try and reflect upon it. You, again, do not have to answer it right away. Right? Like I said, bringing to you all a structure. So we went through build, the first start blooming of a relationship, right? Any meaningful connection. Then we're at preserve. How do I keep my expectation and their expectation aligned throughout? Now we're at maintain. How do I give my relationship endurance, strength, right? How do I give it that motivation, that everyday motivation, that power to keep going? Right? First thing to remember. I think somebody said this some time back, where relevant interests, right? So top executives such as Warren Buffett and Bill Gates, they actually kill two birds with one stone. They seek relationships that are in areas of their interest, right? So if you're somebody who really wants to build professional connect and feel like you're not wasting your time completely, and you're still practicing social self-care, then you can definitely go for people who are aligned with your profession and also talk about relevant business interests, right? When it comes to professional work in an organization, however, one thing that I do have to point out, which I also learned from my mentor, was that you can't have somebody you're reporting to as a person who can also be your friend, if that makes sense, right? Like you can't have your manager as your friend. Very rare. Why? Because you guys are going to have disagreements. You're going to have fights. There's a slight difference. Similar with people in the same team, right? You're going to argue. You're going to have your fights. You will need some time off from this team or this group of people or this individual to go out there and just let it out, right? But having said that, having people with relevant interests, common ground is something I think somebody said a while back, actually is a very good way to build fast connections. And in this fast-paced world that we live in, where we're looking for, relationships, meaningful connections, at the same time, we're looking to not waste time, we can go for something that is of relevant interest. And a very easy way of doing this is through Calendly, right? Technology helps us build relationships and connections. So yeah, you can definitely send 15 minutes or 20 minutes invites to people and just get to know them for 15, 20 minutes, right? On LinkedIn or Calendly. That's something that people actually do on a regular basis. They take out time on, a good Friday evening or Saturday, and they actually have their Calendly slots empty in order to do that. But the idea here is, if we're talking about meaningful, long-term, maintaining relationships, You have to go back, and just like an organization, the relationship with your the individual that you're with, also you guys need to constantly reflect and go for the vision ahead. Reflect and go for the vision ahead, right? So many of the times, if you meet old friends, you'll always realize that this comes very naturally to you. You'll be like, hey, remember the time we used to do da 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 da? Oh, we don't do that anymore. We should, right? That comes naturally. Now try and make that happen in also your new relationships. Constantly reflect, have gratitude for the person who's there, and then think about how your journey looks ahead. Because the more you guys look at the future ahead together, the more likely that you're both expecting to be there, like, expecting to maintain that relationship. I also want to leave you guys with these two thoughts is, firstly, please think about quality of relationships versus quantity. It is by research that human beings are there is a limit to the number of relationships we can manage after it gets too much. Okay, there is a realistic limit, right? So always think about how this relationship is adding value to you, your life, and how you are adding value to the other person's life. Let's not try and increase that 50, 100 numbers. Many of you know that you have Facebook friends or Instagram followers, or people who are on Twitter and LinkedIn. You don't know these people. LinkedIn, let's put it aside. You don't know these people, and yet they're on your friend list, right? So that's simply about quantity and quality. How many people do you actually talk to? How many people are going to be there at that moment that you need them? You need to talk about something, right? Think about those people and try and recreate those relationships. Learn from that and recreate those relationships. Let's not go for quantity. That is something we cannot do, right? Another one, short-term versus long-term. Many of the times, going to leave you again with this thought that when you start building a new connection, you already go with this expectation that, hey, this is going to be great. Maybe you've clicked, using the word clicked, with somebody, but you're already like, hey, this is going great. It's going to be awesome, right? Or maybe the reverse. You're starting with somebody and you both got off on the wrong foot. Must have happened to a couple of you. Don't worry about getting off on the wrong foot, right? Work on that relationship. If it really means something, work on that relationship. And most of the time you'll realize that, hey, many of the times, maybe some of the meaningful relationships you've had, they've maybe started on the wrong foot, or somebody's saying something really stupid in the first conversation. And later you guys are looking back at it and laughing, right? Don't just reminisce these, recreate these for social connection. Recreate the structure you already have. I've just brought you certain tools, but you already have the structure this whole time, right? Recreate that structure. Last question to hold. Going forward, as we have talked about everything today, going forward, looking at building, preserving, and maintaining. How will you know going forward when you have deeply connected with somebody? And how will you express that? Either to the person or to yourself? How will you express that? Firstly, how will you know, right? Is it a feeling? Is it some kind of acknowledgement, right? Or is it just a vibe, right? Like a feeling, like I said. But also, how will you express that to people? Again, this is a question to hold. Don't feel pressured to share anything yet, unless you feel like. But definitely would love to know some thoughts and any discussion points on the chat box. It would be great. So overall today, I'm going to leave you with this last question. This is the prompt. And I want to tell you all that following this structure is easier said than done, definitely. But I think the main structure is the one you have. It's time to recreate that. And it's time to put social connections on high priority, because we're all wired, and someday or another, we're all going to need it, whether it's professionally or personally, right? Great. Thank you so much for listening to me very intently. I hope I did not put any of you to sleep. I want to also point out one quick thing before I completely end. While I was doing this webinar, Zoom has constantly shown to me you can now send non-verbal feedback from reactions on the toolbar. So it was really interesting because I was just going through the non-verbal communication. But hey, look, we're all doing it. That's how we build social connections, right? Great. Okay, over to you, Aisha.
Yes, it was a great session. I mean, great. So I want to also, in case if you have any questions, I can ask that to Shivani as well. Also, there's an option to unmute as well. So in case you have a question, please do. But I'm going to take Chintan's question that was asked earlier. What about the situation where there is a small talk transaction? I'm extremely uncomfortable with small talk. They can't play along. So when I directly jump into a point, many are taken aback. Both see each other as not so in a positive light. So that's something first.
Oh, Chintan, I feel you. Okay, so this is something that even a lot of people are uncomfortable with, right? Small talk. It definitely, I'll tell you, the reality is it comes with practice. Comes with practice, right? Sometimes there's a very famous quote. It's called "fake it till you make it." I don't know if you've heard of it, right? But if you fake something about, I think it's about 55 times to be precise. I think the 56th time is when you're actually like, hey, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. But Chintan, it comes with practice. One of the practice tips that I can leave you with is try and do this where you listen to somebody more than you talking. So you don't feel the pressure to constantly respond, right? Just do the nonverbal, how are you doing, which comes to you normally, right? Don't have to start talking about the weather or did you eat your food. You don't have to go there. But try and do where you get responses from people. So you'll be more comfortable in then knowing what to kind of say, right? You're not in pressure of being the one who leads the conversation. Let the person in front of you lead it. Okay, I hope that helps.
I'm going to launch a poll. Guy, you can give us a feedback and also verbal, as you were saying, verbal communication. So if you can drop some feedbacks on the chat also, that will also be great. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to drop in.
Somebody has sent me a direct message. Would you like me to address it in public though? VV, somebody named VV. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
What to do for feeling drained in a crowd full of people? Ooh, okay. Yeah, so many challenges in social connections, right? So what do you do instead of leaving the party or group? Okay, there's a very cool, quick technique I'm going to tell you. The moment you've started feeling drained, rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. Okay. So 10 being, hey, 1 being like, hey, I'm so low on energy. 10 being, I'm super energetic. Okay. Just like we did in the beginning of the session. The reason why I'm telling you to rate yourself is because only you know your energy levels, right? Now, rate yourself when you're in that social setting. Okay. If you've reached below 5, you're at a 4 or a 3. Oh, this is really draining me. It's okay. Try and walk away. Okay. If you're at a 6 and you're like, hey, I can stick around longer, don't push yourself to stick around 1 whole hour longer. Take it half an hour at a time. Say, hey, I can do half an hour more. Check up on yourself. I can do half an hour more. Check up on yourself. Stay gradually. Okay. Don't try and tell yourself, I can do 5 hours in this party. Or like 2 hours in this party, right? Don't put that pressure on yourself. Half an hour, check, half an hour, check, half an hour, check. Scale yourself. Does that help? Quick tips. Does that help? Let me know. All right. If you're feeling absence of person worth, then we feel connected with person and better way to tell directly. Sorry, Apurva, I could not understand your question. If you could just clarify for me, it would be great.
Meanwhile, Shivani, I had one question for you. very commonly faced by me, I can say, where I feel lack of social connection with my peers who are consuming substances. For example, alcohol, smoking, all those things which I do not indulge into. I rather prefer not to.
Hmm.
But because they gel in so well when they consume these substances, there is a feeling of left out. The feeling is there. So how do I cope with that? Because I want to be a part, but I do not really want to consume the substance. So what should be done there?
What a lovely question, Ria. And I can see why it's come from you.
Yeah.
Thinking very technically. Right. Okay, I will tell you, Ria, that I've been a personal, not a victim, somebody who has this similar experience. So a lot of people around me do smoke, okay? But I stand up for myself by saying that, you know what, I don't need to do that. But having said that, what else did I start doing? I started to build relationships with people who can give me company when this is actually happening, right? So similarly, to give you the same kind of input or a quick tip, I would say that try and think about firstly standing up for yourself. Hey, remember the drawing of boundaries, right? Maybe that's where your last choice, maybe that's where you got to draw the boundary by saying, no, I'm okay. And also go back and reflect, why do I like, I mean, they're adding so much more value in my life otherwise, right? It's just a habit that they have that I don't need to be around them for. Maybe my problem here is not that. My problem here is actually that people are getting along and I'm not able to do that, right? So why don't I go out and also find people that have common interests with me or common ground with me? Maybe they do something else productive that I think is productive, right? I will never say or encourage that, hey, go for a smoke. That's something that you should not do. Stand up for yourself. Understand why is it that you're feeling isolated and lonely when these habits are coming along. Try and build relationships when you need somebody that is not going to do, indulge in these substances while you're feeling a certain way. At least is considerate about it. Right? Does that help? Does that make sense?
Yes, Shivani, it does, but partially I'm thinking in this world where people, corporates gel in so well on
Yeah.
substances, where would I find like-minded people who would not want to prefer doing that for, having a good company, gala time, leisure time, sort of.
Mhm.
So just that, but I feel that's the culture now, and that's something
Yeah.
we need to check for ourselves where we want to fit in.
Maybe we should do another series of webinars just for this bit. But
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. When it comes to smoking, that's the one that I think is highlighted the most. It's become a culture to just de-stress and go out and smoke with your colleagues, right? That's become a thing. When it comes to drinking, it's at least easier because you can stand around people who are drinking, but you don't have to drink, right? Smoking is the one that gets you, but to be honest here, it's about stepping up for yourself. It's social self-care. I'll keep highlighting that over and over again. It does take time to build that inside yourself, the fact that you don't feel lonely or isolated. And it also feels okay. I mean, it's also good to go out and try and build relations with those who don't smoke during that time. Identify those people. Don't use them, identify them and build a connect with them.
On the similar lines, I remember a scene from the Friends series where Rachel starts her new
Yes,
office.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
so it's similar. I think most of the workplaces have this.
Yeah.
So if there is any more questions, please drop in. Otherwise, it's almost time. So we thank you so much, Shivani, and this was a great session. And this is doing the second session again. So I'm hoping there will be more. And thank you so much for joining, everybody. We have a few more sessions lined up in the July. Everything on physical wellness, mental wellness, financial wellness, and all the webinars that you have. And I'm just dropping the link again, just in case. You can go and register for all the sessions that's happening in July. You'll be able to see we have 7 sessions lined up, and it's spread across the month. And I hope to see everybody there. And thank you so much again. Thank you.
Thank you.